Oh.
Weave it together, coming up short and giving up never. Weave it together, come along, come along, come along, come along. Mending it together. A world on fire can't last forever. We're gonna mend it together. A stitch in time is gonna save nine. A stitch in time is gonna save nine. And I wanna be a catalyst for change. Trying something different. I wanna change the rules of the game. 'Cause even the smallest bird can fly up to the top of the tree. And I wanna be a catalyst and find out what could be. Dreaming together. Some say hope is a thing with feathers. We're gonna dream.
Yeah, welcome everyone. And it's easy, just like write your name, where you are, and what business are you doing, and please unmute so that to make sure that the speakers and everyone who's part of the session is being listened to. It's going to be a great session. It's a session that probably all of us will be able to be engaged in. We'll try to kind of like to bring so much intimacy and brings everyone to come into it. So just unmute and anyone just like where you are so that we can make sure that there's no interference from that. So from now, we will just like play the video, and then from that, we'll go straight to the session. Appreciate, Brian, if you would just like play the video.
Welcome to Catalyzing Change Week. This year's Catalyzing Change Week is about solutions from the front lines by social innovators.
In 2022, Catalyst 2030 concentrated its efforts on bringing proximate leaders and frontline solutions to the forefront. Collaborations led by members from the Global South produced groundbreaking reports on climate and transforming education, with an emphasis on offering local solutions. We continued our mission to create an enabling environment for social entrepreneurs to flourish by initiating a letter to donors, signed by more than 1,200 social entrepreneurs and innovators. The Catalyst 2030 awards ceremony was spectacular, and the awards themselves welcomed by the private sector, governments, bio multilaterals and donors.
Catalyst 2030 as a movement is disruptive.
One of the best things I think that's come out of Catalyst 2030 so far is incredible collaboration across the ecosystem that just didn't exist before Catalyst came into being.
The thing I love most about Catalyst is that it's an open movement for social entrepreneurs around the world.
I would encourage anyone who's looking to be more connected with their local communities around social development goals to come along to Catalyzing Change Week.
Welcome to Catalyzing Change Week.
Yeah, there's someone who's just you need to listen. So Christine, I mean, like I was not been part of the other 2 days because I was like sick for that last 2 days. So the songs, and I know some of you, the song, the video, Brian, the video and the song, they've been hearing for some time now. They kind of like
Well,
say,
you should just ask Brian and me and Francois just to sing along. That's how you should have started
it's
this.
like
You
they've
told
been
us to
hearing
sing
it.
along.
They've been hearing it. So it's like, so I'm back for that. So for apologies for that. I mean, it's part of our songs and the good songs that are coming. For me, it gives me some spirit because it's been sometimes not hearing it. So we start the session now. We've done the part of that's the admin part. Please just like so we don't have any disturbance now, just mute. And so I'll go straight to kind of like the program. So it's not a long program. We are kind of like 3 speakers here, myself, Dr. Francois, and also Irene. And Irene, we work together, I mean, on this kind of pillar. And we solidified so well when we met as goals last month. And it was a good kind of a session that we met because we've been meeting in this kind of calls, but in person, we realized that we could champion it. So today is going to be kind of like so interesting in terms of the session that we are going to go about and talking about in the session that we work on, and it's a session that we believe that in Africa is like hugely important to deal with this kind of session now. So I'll just like and introduce my friend umhlobo wam, umngane wam, uFrancois Bonici, Dr. Francois Bonici, who is the director for Schwab Foundation, and also now he's kind of like a head of young global leaders and global shapers at the World Economic Forum now, to just like give us kind of like the and on the microscope in terms of where we are around, which is like kind of like exciting development that has been taking place, and the work has been happening behind the scene. So so hard, and in fact, even part of what we from Monday until Friday, I think it's part of the work that we're looking for. And then beyond that, we're also looking at in terms of like on the front line now, which is myself and Irene, look in terms of what we do now. So my friend, I'll give an opportunity just to come up and able to kind of opening my remark for the session.
Ngoshka, cool. Luvuyo, thank you so much. Pleasure to be here. Nice to see everyone. I think it's a relatively small group. So I'm just going to give a few comments to set the scene. It's been an important week for those of us who work in the sector to be part of Catalyzing Change Week and just see everything emerging from this movement around the world. It's a pleasure to be here. And I know we're going to have a short discussion with Luvuyo and Irene about the Africa Forward campaign, and particularly zoning in and focusing on the challenge for youth, which makes up the majority of our continent and our future. And then because it's a smallish group, I hope that we can also have a discussion rather than just a Q&A on chat, but let's see how we get to when we get there, because I think, it's there's so much to talk about on such a large continent, and there's great experience in the room here. So thanks, Luvuyo, for the introduction. I guess I'm a child of the continent that now sits in an international organization and wants to make sure not only we move collectively forward globally, but also that Africa is well positioned in this movement. So thank you to our co-chairs, Luvuyo and Irene, in really driving and setting up this campaign. And of course to Lessa Communications, I think, who's played a big part, and Nwando at the Secretariat in starting to position, I think, the narrative for Africa. I think there's a lot of work to do. So for those of you who perhaps were in other sessions or weren't in other sessions, I'll quickly summarize the last 18 months, 2 years have been really important in terms of getting international recognition for social entrepreneurs under the broader framing of the social economy. I think the social economy is a term that is broader, that includes cooperatives, social enterprises, mutual associations, entrepreneurial nonprofits that earn revenue and that are active in the market economy, but are geared towards driving social goals and sustainability. The role I think that Catalyst has played is to bring a voice and to help shape some of the important international recognition that has come about, but it's also been some long-term work over the last decade in getting unity in the sector. I think it's really important for all of us because it's an umbrella movement that we can all take part in and also use for our national goals. So let me just summarize, maybe I'll go backwards because on the 18th of April, just 2 weeks ago, there was the first UN resolution on the social and solidarity economy that was passed. It was passed in New York at the General Assembly. It was passed by a process of negotiation and consensus rather than an open debate. So all of the work happened beforehand. It was presented and then it was adopted because all of the work had already been done before. So those of you who know and kind of been part of it, these are probably less exciting UN negotiation process. And those of you who were part heard Raymond Landfeld talk us through a little bit of the process around how the UN works. I'm not sure that's kind of necessary for all of us to know that, but I think it was important to get a sense of kind of how this came about. So a bit of history there is the UN task force was established 10 years ago, which is different UN organizations wanting to recognize the social economy and in there recognize social entrepreneurs. So this is a really momentous occasion in some ways, and also in the end of the day, it's a piece of paper. So it's what we do with it. So it's fantastic to have international recognition, and it means that country governments around the world have some level of commitment to recognize and make progress on the social economy. And there are different aspects inside that resolution and different areas of action, from research, data collection, looking at regulation, and creating policies that would enable the work of social economy actors, as they call it, in various countries, and a commitment to report back to the UN Secretary General in 2 years' time. So 2 years after the resolution. So I'll quickly talk about some of the other important momentums, and then what is the relevance for Africa, and then come and speak to Luvuyo and Irene. So the other important recognitions has been the ILO last year in June passed the first ILO resolution on the social economy. Why that's important? Because the ILO has really been the driver and first recognizer of the informal economy, which I think is critically important on the African continent, and to recognize the informal economy as a really important job creator, and not necessarily just that we want to formalize it always, right? That actually it serves its own purpose. And also the ILO has been very strong for more than 100 years on recognizing cooperatives. But I think social enterprises and social entrepreneurs are a slightly newer form that has got recognition and is now part of this broader social economy. So these are all important recognitions. The OECD is the other entity that passed a set of legal recommendations. There are several African countries that are members of the OECD, but all of them are members of ILO and of the United Nations. So this is fantastic. For those of you who've been working in the social entrepreneurship space, for decades, we've been asking for international recognition. Now that we have it, the question is, what are we going to do with it, and what's our responsibility, and what's the implication for the African continent? Several countries on the African continent already are champions and already starting to have their governments pass policies, create legislation, look at the regulatory environment for social entrepreneurs. And we need to look at those champions, because I think there is some regional learning to happen. But I think in most countries and in many countries, there is not government recognition, there is not enabling policy or government funds or incentives or tax or legal structures or investment into research or into universities or into incubators that is really necessary for the ecosystem to thrive. So it's really now an opportunity for social entrepreneurs in Africa to use this international recognition to start advocating to their governments around, look, this is now, something that your country has signed up to. This is something that is internationally recognized. There's really an opportunity to bring more local attention and government attention, having these resolutions in place. But really, I think the onus is really on us, on the social economy ecosystem, but actually the local social entrepreneurs, to be driving some of that conversation, because the governments won't necessarily take it up automatically. So given, I think, the the last piece, I think, is given the future of the African continent being significant population growth and a significant youth population, the question is, what role will the social economy play here? Can it be a driver and creator of sustainable jobs, of inclusive jobs? Can we bring more interest and attention to jobs that also address some of the social challenges on the continent? So I think that's the kind of starting point for me to have a bit of this discussion. Let's focus it on youth. Let's focus it on the creation of jobs and entrepreneurial skills that can actually help to both provide livelihoods, but also provide better, more inclusive societies and more sustainable societies in Africa. The last thing I'll speak about is just to recognize that the social economy is not necessarily separate and distinct from the bigger transitions that we're going through in the world, which is a transition to a green economy and a transition to a digital economy, both of which have the potential to make inequality worse, right? I mean, we're seeing this now, certainly with the Lindiwe's conversation around artificial intelligence yesterday on Catalyzing Change Week. We certainly know that if we implement all of the best climate policies we have in the world today, it's likely that we'll drive inequality further and push more people into poverty. So the social economy also needs to be integrated into those transitions and to find more intentional ways to bring inclusive, to bring more young people in particular into those transitions. And I think it's the role then of social entrepreneurs to kind of come up with the right kinds of business models that are not that are ensuring that not only people with privilege and education can benefit from those transitions. Okay, that's much longer opening than I think Luvuyo gave me time for, but hopefully that helps to set the scene. And it's really my pleasure to introduce Luvuyo and Irene. So Luvuyo, you've already spoken, but as the director of, the founder of, first of all, of Silululute Technologies, very well known across the world and in South Africa, and now also the director of the Silulu Foundation, which is an exciting new evolution that hopefully you will share a little bit with us about. And then Irene, if we can bring Irene up onto the screen as well. Fantastic, thank you so much. So Irene Mutumba, who is many things. She first of all said she's a teacher. She has a love and passion for youth. She's the founder and executive director of the Private Education Development Network in Uganda. She is an Ashoka Fellow. She is also the co-chair of the Catalyst Uganda chapter. So I'm sure she has other really important responsibilities as well, but that's plenty for us. Irene, welcome today. To both of you, first of all, I think we want to hear just about your work. For those of you on the call who don't know much about your work, please share the work you do. Both of you are focused on skills and youth in Africa. And then we can, given you've both been leading the Africa Forward campaign, maybe you can tell us a little bit about that and the pillar of job creation and counseling that for the future of African youth and jobs. So let's start maybe with you, Irene, given Luvuyo, you've already been starting off here. Tell us a little bit about PEDN in Uganda and the work you've been doing.
Thank you so much. I'm also glad to be here on the Catalyst Change Week. Good afternoon, Catalysts. It's a pleasure once again. And as you have heard, Irene Mutumba, the teacher, the social and business entrepreneur. Sometimes I call myself a serial entrepreneur, but yeah. So I'm the founder and executive director of Private Education Development Network, which is PEDN, an organization which has been around for 20 years. And the story starts from actually me being a teacher with a lot of passion for young people, being in school, and then eventually coming into the community or the private sector and realizing that there was actually a big mismatch from what we teachers were actually bringing into the job market. And for me, from excitement, being a teacher, I was actually more like frustrated in terms of, because I saw myself as a partner in crime. You are the teacher and you're in private sector, but these we are running on parallel lines. Actually, the school, job market, and the community. We had a curriculum which hadn't actually changed for more than 30 years. So for me, that was the turning point. And I said, well, instead of being angry and fighting the system, education for me, is a core. I said, well, if I need to reach as many young people as possible, I need to work within a public-private partnership model. Because as you know, when you are working in education, there's no way you can get away from government intervention, because they are the biggest, they have the mandate in terms of policy, in terms of curriculum, and in terms of what they intend, the outcome of the education system. So what I did is to start it from the root causes of the issues in education, but also working at the top in terms of the effects, the negative effects. Because I knew that if I wanted reform or to change, I also needed to have evidence. So it was a two-pronged approach. And I started off by starting up clubs and what I call the entrepreneurial classroom, where now me as Irene, I could sit behind and the young people in charge of their control, learning, coming up with ideas, learning to speak, learning to innovate, and also start up enterprises, schools. It wasn't a very easy one because definitely even the community, the young people, the parents, the community and the guardians all wanted, come to take my child to school. I want them to be a doctor, a lawyer. There was really nothing much about entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurship for us was for those who were uneducated or who had actually failed in the main school system. So within that,
we have some excitement. Brian, can you help us mute?
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
So the story started off like that. So I came into a memorandum of understanding with government of Uganda, because I wanted the policy to change so that we can have a competence-based curriculum and integrate a few of those areas that had not been taught in schools, like life skills, entrepreneurship, financial literacy, social enterprise. So that was achieved. And then for me in particular, I wanted to work with the National Curriculum Development Center, because we have the mandate, the curriculum in schools. So I was a partner, or I'm still a partner with them from the private sector. And we were able to actually integrate all those entrepreneurship, financial literacy, and social entrepreneurship into the curriculum. And we also brought on board private sector, because it was very important for the two sectors to speak together, because we had a globalized economy and so many investors were coming in saying Uganda labor force is expensive. And even those that were being hired didn't keep the job because they couldn't, they were always waiting to be told what to do and to be shown what to do, which doesn't work in private sector. So we brought the private sector on board so that the three of us can actually co-create a curriculum, and for us to have the private sector help us kind of expose our learners, in terms of internships, in terms of mentorship, in terms of skills. So that really actually worked very well. And right now, as I speak, we have a new curriculum in primary up to now A level. We are now working towards the university, because we have many unemployable graduates in Uganda. So, graduates, but not really very productive and competitive in the workspace. So for me, in terms of job creation, I thought, education is a pathway, And when I say education, I'm talking about school, the formal and informal. So we've been able to infuse skills and get young people to actually practice, what through projects. With the younger ones, we start off with social activities because I was very, very intentional in terms of getting young people to start, and looking at the environment, the social side of entrepreneurship. Because of course, with business, it's all about how much money can I make, and that wasn't so good in terms of the new approach. So it has been very intentional. Primary, you get awareness, you expose. As they grow older, they start really projects at school level, and then they can actually now work with the parents at home, actually make sure that the work continues and they get mentored. And it's been very intentional in terms of social entrepreneurship. So I'm thinking that in terms of our job creation, we already have, the good thing is that we already have a few success stories around, which we think we are going to make sure that we pilot, in all the chapters around in the Africa Forward. So I think this is a great opportunity for us. Social entrepreneurship is the new, when you look at government is not creating more jobs. Private sector maybe not. So the new opportunity lies in social entrepreneurship and social enterprise. So we want our young people leave school, yes, with a certificate, but with a job through social entrepreneurship. So I could leave it there for some time because
thanks, Irene.
sometimes
It's a good start to the conversation, and we're heading on to the Africa Forward piece, which is not only your work, but how do we stimulate more of that throughout, and how do we connect with others that are doing that? Fantastic. I think what you're doing is recognizing that the social economy could be a really important space for job growth and providing people the skills to do that. But also, to coming to Luvuyo now, it's clear that many of the skills also need to be digital skills, right? So Luvuyo, maybe quickly tell us, probably many people on this call know your story, but maybe tell us a bit about Silulo and also the foundation, and then we can come between the two of you to talk about, well, how can Catalyst and how can this Africa Forward campaign help to mobilize others?
No, thank you so much. And also thank you so much to you, Dr. Francois, for the opening remarks. As you were talking, I was just kind of get so much excitement in the sense that the work that we continuously, working on, slowly it's becoming see the results, and it's kind of like saying that it's a good time to be a social entrepreneur now, anywhere in the world now. Just to come in from Silulo, we've been existing in the last 19 years, started in Khayelitsha in the Western Cape. So as Irene, I used to be a teacher also. And then I kind of resigned from teaching and I started selling second-hand computer. And then I never realized that the digital divide it's so huge in the community. And that time it was more from a teacher. I never realized that it's one of the biggest problems that makes, many young people can't find employment, because even today, many young people, they can't even, know how to start a computer. They don't know how to, to able to know the, the language around the coding, and they are in a space that there's many opportunity for the job opportunity, but they are not, getting the opportunity because of the education that they come in. It's not able to, allowing for them now. So when I resigned, focusing on starting Silulo One Stop Center, which is like the digital hub that I started in the rural areas in the township of South Africa, where enables many young people could walk in and get the skill. So they will come for 6 months. They come after they finishing the school, and they looking for study further, start their business or finding employment. So we're dealing with the young people after school, which they're looking for next things, but they cannot go to university. They can't go to find employment now. So we train in a year about 5,000 young people in the 46 centers that we have it, in this 3 provinces where we find ourselves, presence now. In that part now, we realize that, as much as we looking for the employment and we link them with the retail space now, And that's how the foundation has come about now. It's just like there's a huge need for entrepreneurship development. I mean, social entrepreneurs in the space now. Hence, it started with the Silo Foundation now, so we can allow those who can't find employment, who can't study further, who've got ideas, and then they can start their business now. So the foundation now is looking at now to able to support them on a 10-month program, where for 2 months it becomes a content, 4 months mentorship, 4 months consulting, and then linking and placing and looking at a micro fund, funding for this small business now. So we've got different cohorts of the entrepreneurs that are coming in, are part of the program. And it's been amazing to see the type of the levels of the entrepreneurs that are in the township rural areas and who really wants to grow and scale in where they are now. So we become now a space now where we support now. And the most important things, maybe from Irene's side, I think saying that once a teacher, you're always a teacher now. So I find myself, I've been spending much more times in the back now to teaching the basic thing that from 19 years, when I was starting the business now, I impact to the entrepreneurs in order for them to kind of like, I think that's one part. Now, the second part, I find it's like what they need is role modeling. The entrepreneur, they need local, heroes so they can look up to. And most of the time we see us, we're successful and we focusing on the big things and we remove ourselves with people that need us now. So I find it's like so much engaging to find local entrepreneurs that can connect, that relate, they can. And then thirdly, what I'm also picking up now, working with entrepreneurs, that they commit the social capital. They appreciate to come in and be part of these sessions because they feel they've been valued, they've been heard, and they can get the sense of the community. So that's kind of something that is much more important. Then the fourth one is more network. They're able to be kind of like network and in a way that they can be connected in a different space now. So this is what, Silulu has been working, and I'm kind of working up in aspects now. And the reason why I'm kind of doing the work now in terms of like linking with Africa Forward now with the catalyst, it's because of seeing that we could do so much in micro in our own areas, but we can't change the system. We have to work together to make the system now. And that's one part. But two, and because of what we talk about, it's like in South Africa, it's either you are a business or NGO. There's no social entrepreneur. So there's nothing called social entrepreneur. So even if for me, I want to kind of get some kind of funding and the work that I do, I can't because the way it is now. So which is so important now to able to kind of like have more social entrepreneurs as an illegal entity now that can unlock now. And that also can make sure that even the young youth in the areas can come in the sector. Because the fact that they're not coming in the sector now, because they know that once they start their business, and most of their business, they are started what they want to solve the problem in the community. But because it becomes a business and now they become a complex now. So with this kind of development that is taking place now, I think for me, it's kind of a beginning of a great things that is happening now. And maybe my closing shot, it's just to say, I see so much challenges in Africa, but I see abundance of opportunity that can be solved by social entrepreneurs in Africa. And I think this is a time for Africans to come together in solving this problem through social enterprise.
Yeah, thanks, Luvuyo and Irene, so much. So you're both, it's important to hear your work because, they're also, you've been doing this a long time, but there are also lots of Luvuyos and Irenes across the continent, maybe not exactly like you, but this continent is rich with social enterprise. We have a bunch on the call, I think, so we also want to be able to hear from them a little bit. But it's important now that you're also taking a step to drive a campaign which is helping to, I think, connect then different social enterprises, but also set a goal to say we want more young people in this sector, and we think this is a growth sector. And we now have these international recognition that can help to drive the local actors, governments, investors, businesses, banks, etc., to give recognition and say, okay, maybe this is something we need to be working more actively on. So tell us a bit more about the Africa Forward campaign for the people who don't know it, and maybe the pillars specifically on job creation and career counseling and why you think that's important, and also how others, on the call here can get involved, because the two of you can't do it all.
Yeah, that was quite important. I mean, like, as part of Catalyst, I mean, it's like the second biggest membership on Catalyst. They come from Africa. And we've tried it, I mean, in the last 3 years to find a way that can work together as Africans and collaborate. And we're struggling in terms of in the beginning until we started launching chapters. Even on the chapters, we still also struggling. And until last year on the CCW, when we realized that we need to come together, come up with a manifesto, and then that manifesto translates now to form Africa Forward campaign. So it's a campaign which is for 3 to 5 years that we have it. And the campaign is divided into 5 areas that we wanted to kind of like able to shift the way in Africa now. It's kind of looking at in terms of how do we look at shifting the narratives. I mean, like, as you are saying now, there's many social entrepreneurs in this call. I mean, good stories that we have around social entrepreneurs Africa. And then how can we able to give that an opportunity to showcase what is good in Africa in terms of social entrepreneurs now, and the ecosystem that development that Mama Muya tomorrow able to share about it in terms of how from a policy, from a government, big businesses, how that can be unlocked it to make sure that the sector of social entrepreneurs has been looked at now. So it's an area now. And then the funding aspect, which happened yesterday, where Musone was able to look at in terms of even on the funding, the current funding of social entrepreneurs in Africa, they are not getting much more funding. The money still comes to big businesses, big kind of like, guys who are understanding in terms of how the system now. So we need, how do you bring it, to the local so that they can able to get that funding? It's part of like, and then you look at in terms of how you also look at capacity building now for the social entrepreneurs in Africa to make sure that they are ready for this opportunity. And then lastly, this is where myself and Irene now are involved in now. They're saying that in Africa, we've got a huge youth unemployed that it's going to be an opportunity for us in Africa now. How do you look at that to make sure that as a sector, we're creating employment for the youth so they can find employment, and also so that they can see that they can also, able to become next social entrepreneurs seeing from us now. So this is how the Africa Forward has come about it. So I ran with Irene because it's big this leg to drive, to see, and what we want. Our call here on the call, get involved in this youth employment and get involved, work with us. Let's kind of like able to work together to make sure that we're strengthening this pillar, because this is a key pillar that we see that, we could make much more different in that regard.
Thanks. Irene, do you want to come in a little bit on the vision for the Africa Forward campaign, but particularly the pillar around, job creation and also this entry point into career counseling, because we're going to have lots of Irenes, but is there also something, ambitious that we could be thinking about for either countries or across regions?
Thank you so much. Just to really add on to what Lovio has mentioned, this for us is very, very intentional. Creating social enterprises through skilling them, how they can see themselves really be the drivers of creating, the jobs, because the way things are changing in the world today, I think no private sector, no government can actually, take it alone. So the issue here for us is to skill and empower these young people at all levels, whether in informal sector, whether formal sector, make sure that they can identify issues around themselves and they actually act on those issues by also involving others around them and the communities. So for us, it's going to be a very deliberate effort to make sure that that is the way forward, that is the approach, but also bringing in those models that can inspire. So there's a lot of work that is going to go into that space, inspiring them with stories that have changed communities, stories that have also helped others get employment, give others employment. And still, even if we have these traditional careers, within that, there's so many pathways that lead into social enterprise. If you look at health, a doctor might need, services or a local birth attendant, village health teams. So we are trying to say, yes, we still need those other traditional roles. But there's a lot that also you can acquire, because we are trying to create an ecosystem that is going to actually be a change-making movement within all the communities. So yeah, I mean, we want to ask everyone to kind of join us in that space. Be very intentional about social entrepreneurship, about change making, about social enterprises. That's the greatest opportunity for our young people at the moment.
Thanks, Irene. Maybe in just 2 or 3 minutes, we're going to open up, I think, for questions, and I think we can just do it, people asking. But maybe what do you want to get out of this session today? You've got, some allies potentially on the call. What are we looking for in terms of support to drive parts of this campaign forward? What are the pieces we think we need really practically as like the first next steps? We've got a huge continent, big ideas. What do we need to do to get started? And what can this group potentially help with? And they can start thinking about that. And as they start preparing their questions or comments, which I'll invite them to do in 5 minutes.
You're right. I mean, like this, what we're looking for, it's like to mapping up now this sector to make sure that who does what in every part of the country in Africa, to make sure that they are part of this pillar. So that anyone who is working with the youth and employment and entrepreneurship, they can be part of this pillar and then join the pillar and be part of that. That's what we're looking for now. And that is going to require funding for us to make sure that we able to look at that. So we look at from the funding, and then also we look at in every country, in every chapter, that part of the members, they can be kind of like the championing in the areas where they can also have a buying now. So we look at allies, we look at supporters and collaborators. We are saying that we can't do this work alone. We can only do it with the collaboration and working with anyone who's interested in their work in Africa.
Thanks, Irene.
Yeah. Well said. We need co-creation, we need collaboration, because when we move together, we can create the change that we want. So everyone, I see that all of you who are on this call already be probable collaborators. So let's move together and take this pillar to the next level, because there's lots of challenges, so opportunities for this pillar in terms of our youth in Africa.
Great, thanks. So welcome comments. I mean, Brian, I don't know if the group is big enough or small enough to just put everyone on the screen. Would be nice to see. I think we need to be a community. I don't know if it's like too many people that might be squashed, but let's see if we can do that. It would be great to hear some comments and questions from the group. There are a couple of different threads we've been talking about, so welcome comments across all of them. One is, okay, we have international recognition. What do we need to be doing at a country level? In particular, focused on the youth question. What other ideas, are emerging from this group that we need to be pulling into this Africa Forward campaign? Do you have any ideas to really help Luvuyo and Irene in what needs to be done next to really build a stronger campaign? Because we need to take it to action now, and we need to do that, as Irene said, in a collaborative way with the ideas from this community. So
yeah, no, I mean, it's one Irene, thing that part of the meeting that we have it and saying that we've been meeting, we need to kind of come up with an action, and things now, and with this development that are taking place now, it's key to work together in a systematic way, but in a way that we also work in the local way. So the chapters are much more important now to establish now, to make sure that we have able to make sure that everyone who's in this call fit in and be part of the chapters. So part of this pillar can be driven from the chapters, but the chapters is very important now to make sure that we've got a way to able to kind of a plan, to have a strategy. How can we able to engage with the government and able to kind of like having a voice for Catalyst 2030 and Africa Forward in that aspect now. So we need to kind of like know now that we cannot work there. We have to work everywhere now to work together now. So we need everyone who wants to kind of join the movement. We need to make sure that, I mean, by the time we end the call, O'Brien will share the kind of the contact details, get involved, we'll follow up, we'll have a follow-up kind of engagement. But beyond that, we really want to make sure that the most work has to come in the chapters where it matters most and where, I mean, things are happening in that regard.
Thanks, Luvuyo. So we've already got a hand up. Dr. Wamuyu, nice to see you and welcome. Do you want to start? And then Brian, I'm not sure how you're going to spotlight everyone, but it would be nice to see.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I came in a little late. My last meeting took longer than I had anticipated. So I missed the beginning of this discussion, but I wanted to add to the discussion because I'm familiar with it and say that in addition to what has been discussed by my colleagues from the Africa chapter, it is that we are also learning from initiatives that are working well in the area of youth employment. And one such initiative is one by the funding from the government, the Dutch government. There is a youth employment program called Challenge Fund for Youth Employment. And the success of this fund is in working in partnership with the private sector companies. So the fund very specifically wants to see private companies collaborate with youth organizations and together scale youth jobs. And the fund matches. The only challenge with this fund is that it doesn't give the full grant for training or scaling, but gives 50%, which is doable and works very well because a private sector company does make money. And therefore it is we are therefore saying the success of each country, the private sector companies should be part of the success of each country by ensuring that young people and women are employed and it's working well. In the last 5 years, in Kenya alone, we are creating close to 30 jobs. So 30,000 jobs, sorry, not 30,000 jobs. So 30,000 jobs. So that's really something. I mean, it's like 10,000 jobs a year. So it's a methodology that works. And I'm hoping that we will be able to tap into others that are working and then get partners to work with us to help if it is in supporting those kind of initiatives. I just wanted to add that to what has already been said. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Christine.
There we go. I'm just thinking this is really excellent presentations by everyone that should.
Just went on mute, Christine.
I unmuted myself. Someone muted me. And is that, should we not create common statistics around this that everybody has access to? Like 60% of the population are under 25, like 65% of jobs that primary school students will be working in Africa do not exist. So there's so many really compelling statistics that if we have a one-pager that everybody can work off of, then we can really get people to understand the urgency of job creation and education for youth. The other thing is we talk about the narrative. Well, a couple of years ago, I narrated a session on women in social entrepreneurship in Africa, and I referred to Google Images. So it had women social entrepreneurs selling fruits and vegetables and other items outdoors, where it had male entrepreneurs in a very nice suit, like you'd find Francois and Luvuyo in, and maybe not right now, but in a suit behind a computer. So there's a lot of issues with imagery. I just did a session a couple of days ago on women in the social sector, and Google has thousands of vectors in women in high heels with 13-inch waists. It doesn't have occasionally you get someone who is maybe not in a perfect size in an, a pose that is, the power pose. It's not the reality. So I think we have to be thinking of the imagery and not of the narrative. Thank you.
Christine, I mean, I can only agree. I'm sure everyone does on the call as well. One of those 5 pillars of the Africa Forward campaign, I've just looked at it, and maybe we should share that and talk it through with the audience, is around that narrative. And if the big focus is going to be on youth and women in particular, then creating imagery and narrative around, the reality and the role models, right, that Luvuyo was talking about. And as you say, these stark statistics that those jobs don't exist today, and that the social economy can be a significant part of it. I don't know if that's where we want to go. I mean, there are obviously a lot of people working on youth and jobs in Africa, right? From African Development Bank to World Bank to you name it. And lots of people globally talking about how the future of work is changing. I think we need to find a core and a niche of saying, this is a growing sector. And actually, just coming out of our summit at the World Economic Forum here on jobs and growth, recognizing that, there is artificial intelligence is going to automate many, many things that we do. There's a big risk, right, around that, there is less concern. There's lots of fear around, will these take jobs? Probably jobs will shift, like in every industrial revolution, right? The question is, it may not take over jobs, but what it might do is that other humans using these technologies will take your job, right? So it's also being able to prepare our youth for the new opportunities, but also that there are certain things that technology will not do, which is really around social services and care and community-based activities, which we do need to then kind of recognize that's actually then going to be a growth area. So yeah, lots to do, I think, on the narrative. Nick, this is your bread and butter, so we'd love to hear from you. Nice to see you.
Well, amazing presentation. It's just amazing. I've come to this very late. I saw Irene and Luvuyo at the Skull gathering of the Catalyst family, and so I've got lots to learn about this Africa Forward initiative. I find there's always like this tension between being really ambitious and really bold, and then being actually very concrete and very specific and finding things that people can do. So each chapter, each country will have specific issues, and they will want to look at it needs to be localized. On the other hand, what's easy and something that we can all do that will move things forward, that even if there's no funding, that even without all the other things we need in place to make the bigger change, could do. And that's where I was sort of inspired by what Luvuyo was saying about the importance of sort of local heroes. Actually, for the places we work, so often, there's not much of a concept of what an entrepreneur is or a social entrepreneur. And, who are the people I look up to who look like me, who come from where I come from, my background, and have made it. I think, we all as organizations have inspirational stories and use our inspirational stories often for our own purposes to attract funding to ourselves. But actually, if we were clever about how we put some of those stories together as a movement, and if there are ways to get that kind of inspiration in front of young people, it won't solve everything, but it's easy. It's a start. It might get some attention. And, the one thing I guess we've always seen, it's like the power of inspiration is incredible. You can spend forever training people. If they don't care, they won't do it. If you inspire them, they might go find their own training, their own opportunities. Anyway, that's a little 2 cents, but thanks so much for your own inspiration. I feel very inspired.
Thanks, Nick. I would encourage, because we have, I think, 20 minutes or so to go. I think we'll try and end at 15 minutes past, but some people may need to leave on the hour. But you've given us also, the right, the ambition is there, starting to be some concrete actions. But that's really, let's make use of this conversation with the people on the call now to say, either someone can volunteer to do something, or to say, here's a really concrete idea. So welcome that, and an open discussion from everyone else, but also to hear if there are other people on the call that want to share a little bit about what they're doing. Brian, can I change the gallery view? Not everyone is visible. Is that right?
Go ahead, Francois.
And I have already. Is there anyone? I think I see someone's hand up. Pukle Nails and Beauty and Bagenda. I'm just looking through the participant list. I can't see it all. There are 2 hands up. Please just unmute yourself if you'd like to make a comment.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
So my name is Kudzai. I'm here in Cape Town and I'm a developing entrepreneur. So this is really a good initiative, and I just think that at some point we need to catch them young. By the time they leave school, they need to already anticipate they can be employed by smaller entrepreneurs. Because what I find, some people will sit at home saying they can't get a job. They're not trying to reach out to smaller businesses because in their mind, the only jobs that should be a job they call an employment opportunity for them is a big corporate company.
Thanks so much. And are you one of the Silula Foundation recent graduates from the boot camp? Yeah, we got to see each other in Cape Town just a couple of weeks ago. Congratulations. It was amazing to hear about your work. So I'm so glad you've joined this call. Great. Luvuyo, Irene, if there aren't any other comments, maybe coming back to you, I mean, maybe you can share a little bit.
I think there's one hand up.
Oh, sorry. Please help me, Irene. Thank you.
Bagenda, Austin. Just proceed, Francois. I don't think his microphone is even connected.
Okay,
please proceed.
Perfect. Yeah, no worries. Thanks a lot. I wanted to come back to just Luvuyo and Irene. So let's just focus, you know, the Africa Forward campaign got launched. It put out a kind of a ambitious statement. You two are really helping, not overall, but also on this job creation pillar. You know, we've got some good input from this group. What are your thoughts? Like, what the reality of Catalyst is, you know, obviously people are volunteering as well. You know, we're working, Luvuyo, to really build some capacity for an Africa Forward team. You know, if someone came in today, what would be, you know, what would be their first job you would give them? What would they work on? Brian is smiling here. Maybe he's got somebody to work with.
No, I mean, like, just, I mean, firstly, just to appreciate, I mean, the input from, I mean, Christian input was amazing. Because, I mean, facts speaks, and we need to narrate the story so well to extend that to showcase what is happening and what's like the future comes about. So I think you spot on now. And Nick, I mean, just like I was looking for you, and you're probably supposed to be part of this conversation, was when we were in the car, calls, we're talking about kind of this kind of a session now, because your work, because you work at the school, I work after school, and then Irene works in terms of, like, I mean, finding employment and also with the companies. So all of our work, I mean, together, it's much more important in terms of how can we shape. And I think some of the things, one, they don't have the money. It's just like us to make sure that we able to formalize these things and we move forward. And I'm hoping that we will be able to kind of like move forward in that regard. And we put these narratives and we showcase these good stories, and we also make sure that there's a possibilities. There's something already that is taking place. We're not starting a new thing. Things are happening on the ground, and we work on what is working around on the ground. So I kind of like see around that. But I think, I mean, on your question, Francois, in terms of like, there's still, you need an Africa Forward champion that is going to coordinate all of these pillars together to make sure that, because all of them, they are working together. So you need kind of that kind of champion that is going to make sure that as much as we're busy with all of this, but the work of Africa Forward move forward, because there's so much that we could do together, and many ideas are coming in now, which is so great that we could look at now. But I think through that Africa Forward House, it's quite important. And we need to kind of like localize it in every region, in every chapter, to make sure that the chapters have, existence now. And I think something that we realize when we are meeting now, that the chapters are the backbone for us, but Africa Forward becomes and enables to make sure that it works now. So I see that as that kind of a champion will work with us to able to achieve this thing, because next year, when we meet next year, we meet and able to showcase in terms of the work now that we're able to achieve now, because that has to be a way saying these are kind of initiatives that we've worked, because the work of the youth and the way it is now, it's not waiting for us now, and the work is like huge, and we need to do something as soon as possible. And I don't doubt in terms of willingness, it's here. We just need to make it happen now.
Thanks, Luvuyo. Irene? So concrete thoughts along with Luvuyo around what you would, what we would need to do next with this campaign.
Just to also add on to that, it's just something that came to my mind right now, is also to kind of map those the youth. The movements, the young people already in that space. Also make sure that as part of the pillar, they come in also to kind of, because social enterprise, and you need something where it's for them and also by them. So one of the things also is, as we go along in this campaign, how do we bring also the young on board to be part of the pillar? Because that is one way also how we can reach as many. I think I saw a question from Beru, how can you reach 10 million? It's through them also that we can actually reach that. So map them, bring them on board, get those good stories, and then move. I think those are my
I'll come back to Christine's one. I think
remarks.
We need to also, if we want an ambition like that, 10 million jobs, but then let's be specific, 10 million jobs in the social economy, or 10 million jobs in social enterprise sector, whatever it is. Like, I think we've got to set up something that is a contribution to these other efforts that are happening across the continent, right? So, we can't just say 10 million jobs, because lots of people are saying that. So something where we have an expertise, we want to build the ecosystem, we want to push the policy agenda, then it gives us, a target and goals to work on. So if that is the goal, right, then we need to rally people around the goal, but also provide the expertise and the support that would come from this sector, right? But then recognize who else needs to be playing in it. So I think a fair bit of research needs to be done to make those goals, both realistic and also piggybacking on already the goals that the African Union has. That's one of the things I actually didn't mention. I don't know if many of you know, but the African Union just launched in December a 10-year strategy on the social economy. I'm not sure if I probably should have mentioned that in my opening. That would have been a good place to start. But again, we need to align with the goals that Africa has set for itself and demonstrate that this sector has something to contribute to those overall goals, right? And I think, in this space, there's a lot of scope for that, and Catalyst can play an important role, and then the local chapters can play that at a national role. So I think we still have quite a bit of work to do. So Nick, you've got a question here. I would say we can go for another 10 minutes and hear any comments, and then perhaps Luvuyo and Irene, I'll ask you for your closing thoughts on this.
Francois, Francois, as the co-chair for Africa, please allow me to just add one sentence to what has been said by Luvuyo and Irene.
Of course.
Yes, on the work that we are trying to do in this pillar. One of the things that has come through is that the country chapters are very key in as achieving what we're trying to do in this area. And very specifically, if you look at each and every of the countries that we're working in, they have a youth employment strategy, each country. So, our effort to work with government, if taken to the next notch in terms of ensuring that we are part of the impact that the country makes, then we will make very good progress. And giving an example of that is last year we were able to, in Kenya, work with the Ministry of Housing. And through this, one of our member was able to penetrate the housing industry and is currently working with government to create jobs in Kenya. So if we are part of what the government is doing and we actually improve what they're doing because we have very good skills as social entrepreneurs, it means that even if not the many numbers we're talking about, because I think our number may be ambitious, we will make very good progress just by working with government before we bring in other development partners. They just wanted to add that because it's already happening. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Nick, you had a question.
Yeah, it was possibly less a question and more of just a statement. I think Irene sort of hit it on the head. Like when we try and do everything ourselves, we can never achieve quite as much. If this is a movement of social entrepreneurs and social organizations, that's great. But actually, it's young people themselves who have the greatest vested interest, the best reach. The more we're able to activate them to be part of the solution. We haven't cracked it ourselves, but we're always trying to sort of find ways to make things go a little bit viral. We can, we just can't do it in the same way, and we don't understand it as well as young people themselves. So yeah, that would just be a plea to this community to broaden it out a little bit and not feel we have to do all the heavy lifting just us.
And actually have their voice in shaping it, Nick. I mean, so
yeah,
actually,
absolutely. Yeah.
Next time on the panel, please.
Yes, and they're even better in ICT. So could do
Absolutely.
much more in terms of spreading the message and bringing others on board. We're so happy to see the young lady from South Africa.
Yeah. Frankly, the TikToks of this world, the potential for young people are spending ages if they have obviously lots don't, but when they've got access to communications, they're not going to our NGO websites to find their information. It needs to be fun, it needs to be delivered by them, and they're so inspirational anyway. The ones that get ahead can pull everyone else along.
Thank you, Nick. Really appreciate that. And, it's a very good reminder, particularly for this pillar, but I think even for everything across the Africa Forward campaign, given, the makeup of the population and the future. So thanks for that. I know certainly in the World Economic Forum, we have the kind of global shapers community, and they're really, more than half of them are geared towards, social innovation, creating community solutions. So that's something that we can certainly look to mobilize. And I know Giroux has been building a partnership and a relationship with them. So something we can do a lot more and bring into this campaign. Luvuyo, we can talk about that offline, but thanks for the suggestion. That's kind of new in my remit here. So something I have now a little bit more influence on. So look forward to that. Katlego, you've got your hand up. Good to have you here. Do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Thank you. I am Katlego Chibamba. I happen to also be a member of the South African chapter of Catalyst 2030. Very interested in the idea of especially including young people and the youth. What I find to be something that I think is a little bit missing is having conversations about promoting the inclusion of young people, especially through social protection. Oftentimes when we have conversations in this light and in social protection, we speak about poverty, but in many instances we don't really put ourselves in the shoes of young people and actually get to see what it is that they are struggling with. So I would suggest very vehemently so that in as much as we are opening channels and bringing up opportunities for young people, it is important that we also bring some sense of local ownership to it. And we approach ourselves in a way that if it means, you know, you're bringing money into the space, into communities to be able to uplift young people, the manner in which, or the models in which you are using to be able to bring that money to young people should be able to speak to the young people, should be able to be owned by young people. So my challenge, especially in the way in which we look at the inclusion, especially of young and the youth, is that we need to be very critical in the way that we are able to relate to the young. Not come in a sense that we know because we have lived and we have all of these ideas and you're young and all you need is opportunities to be able to employ yourselves or to be employable, but to also get ourselves into the place where we relate to them. If it's through grant making, we need to ensure that our approaches are very participatory in nature. If it's initiatives that are aimed at promoting employment amongst the youth, it should be initiatives that should be ideally locally owned, and the ringing word and buzz around it should be really promoting local ownership, so that the young are able to come up and be able to, you know, address some of the issues that are otherwise not really included when it speaks to socioeconomic development, especially for young people. Thank you.
Thanks, Katla, for really important points. And I think, you know, while advocating for perhaps, you know, this sector, and I don't think we're talking about raising a fund here or funding young people, we're trying to kind of build an ecosystem for those kinds of things, recognize that those need to be done in different ways to the way they've been done in the past. And I think that's what you're kind of arguing for, right? So, you know, we really appreciate that input. As we're coming up on time, maybe just for our hosts, Luvuyo and Irene, if you'd like to have some closing thoughts, and Dr. Wamoyo, if she's still around as well, as she may have dropped off, just some closing thoughts on taking this forward.
No, I mean, like you could see, you got like the youngest co-chair of Africa chapter, that we have the young people. I mean, they are coming so strong, coming with kind of like in the seat, and this is what probably we want different voices to come up, so that we all brought in the space to make sure that everyone has been kind of accommodated in the space now. I mean, it's been great session. I really love the session. I really love it. Thank you so much, I mean, you kind of having sessions so well, and the way it happens, and also Irene, I kind of feel that it's a space that we are going to work so well now as we're shaping now. For the first year, we're kind of shaping, getting exactly where are we trying to do now. And I think we've got a kind of an understanding what's like how things happening now. And I could see some Nick coming up, want to get involved. There are many in the call wants to get involved. And just to say, it cannot end on this conversation. It has to be something that we're able to do it even beyond. Because I mean, this session is all about just like saying there's this pillar which focusing on the youth, and we're understanding in terms of the youth in Africa that needed now. We need everyone get involved. Please participate. Even if you are not part of this pillar now, if you see you could work on narrative, or you could work on the funding, any space now, join the movement, be part of the movement. It is a space now. And it is in a good space where we all want to see a better Africa, and an Africa that we all want to kind of like to build. And we can only build by all together working in a common interest for Africa now. So what all this pillar we're trying to do, and even from Africa Forward, we are saying this is a movement for social entrepreneurs who are in Africa, that we kind of like say that we want to make sure that we want to work it on the ecosystem now. So for me, it's just like being gratitude to everyone who's behind the scene, making the session so great, and then looking forward for more of the engagement that will take place beyond. And please look at the email from Brian Nwando inviting you to more sessions to come. Thank you so much for everyone.
Thank you so much, Irene.
And just to add on to Luvuyo and you, Francois, I want to thank everyone who has been part of this team. For us in the pillar, it's been a learning process. And I think now we have more information to work on, a good strategy going forward. So it's still, I think it's going to be a salutation as work in progress along the way. I think it's very important for all of you to bring in more ideas and to make sure that we attract more players in the public-private partnership model, because we need the governments on board, we need the MasterCards on board, and all others. So I think now we have something to start on with, but we need your collaboration and collaborative effort. I think we are going to make this, because I believe this is one key pillar that is key for Africa, looking at the fact that we have many young people under 35 years unemployed, and so many things are happening. So if we are to up that, we need to work, everyone in the government, in the private sector, in the communities, looking at pathways which can give us the numbers. And for me, that's why I said, yes, we start early in schools and prepare them, see the world out there, start them off early. My slogan is start early and succeed young. So if we do that, it is also another pathway, as we also look at other pathways can create jobs and good careers for our young people. So thank you so much. I look forward to working with you this pillar going forward. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Irene. Thank you everyone for coming today and for your contribution. Lots of work to do. We've got some international momentum. We need to really claim it across 54 countries. But let's start with the few where we've got some good momentum and catalyst chapters. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thank you.